Marriage is a good and godly thing, I'm told. Marriage, I'm told, is a thing that's worthy some effort and hard work. Marriage is a thing worth saving in times of trouble. And yet, even though it's good, godly, and worthy thing, there are marriages that, for the sake of one or another spouse, should end. There are situations and relationships that are not godly and holy, that can end up being abusive, toxic, that can hurt one of the spouses. And so even though it is a good, godly, and holy thing, there are times when you have to let go and forgive. And for your own sake, and sometimes for the sake of your child or children, leave the other person behind. We can agree on both of these statements, can't we? We can, on one hand, appreciate the beauty and goodness and godliness of marriage. And on the other hand, we can, with integrity, say that there are times where, for your or for your children's sake, you need to walk away. You need to end this relationship. And whenever that happens, whenever separation or divorce happens, there is lots of guilt, lots of hurt feelings, anger, grief perhaps, and other emotions. But probably the most difficult one is forgiving that person who perhaps abused you, perhaps wasted X number of years in your life, or did something else. So letting go and forgiving are necessary to happen if that person is expecting to have a happy and healthy life after an unhealthy relationship. And I think something similar was happening to the followers of Jesus. For the first 20, maybe 30 or 40 years after his resurrection. On one hand, they identify themselves as Jews. On one hand, they believe that they are members of Jewish religion. They didn't want to start something different from Judaism. They were raised in Jewish religion, and they wanted to be buried in Jewish religion. And yet, after the death and resurrection of Christ, that very religion that they were in love with, that very religion that nurtured them, now became abusive and unhealthy. Jewish religious authorities could not stand the followers of Jesus because they were claiming that Jesus, whom they crucified, is the fulfillment of Jewish religious laws. He basically had created an earthquake in Jewish theology. And his followers became persona non grata among Jewish authorities. So we have the first generation of the followers of Christ dealing with something of a divorce situation. They think of themselves as being in this relationship, as being a part of Jewish religion. But in that relationship, the other party is kicking them over and over and over again, sometimes quite literally. So there comes a time, we don't know exactly when, but there comes a time when the followers of Christ have to let go of their Judaism, and they have to forgive their persecutors in order to live a healthy life. It is exactly what happens after a divorce, after your relationship that lasted for a number of years is there no more. It happened with the disciples of Jesus. They were grieving the loss of their Jewish identity. And they had to let go, and they had to forgive. So by the time the Gospel of John is written, the last of the Gospels, John had developed a clearly distinct Christian identity. Unlike Matthew, John is not even trying to fix that old marriage ever again. When you read the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew still is hoping, well, maybe we can go to therapy together and fix this relationship. Matthew is not cutting off the Jewish identity from the life of Jesus and his followers. John is finished. John has accepted internally that this relationship is beyond saving. That if the followers of Christ want to live a healthy and happy lives, they have to let go and they have to forgive. Hence, when you read this passage from today's Gospel of John, it contains both of these elements as direct instruction from Jesus. You see, in Mark, Matthew, and Luke, when Jesus sends the apostles out towards the end of the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus says, "Go and teach all the nations, baptize them, and teaching them the gospel," blah, 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 right? You remember those words? Go and teach, go and baptize, go and make disciples. In John's gospel, the go and the sending out happens in this chapter we just read. Jesus, on the Easter day, comes to the place where they were gathered, even though the doors are locked. They experience him present in their midst. First, in order to identify himself, he shows them the wounds. Then he says, peace be with you, or basically, shalom, brothers. And then we have the sending moment. As the Father has sent me, so I send you. Go, whomever sins you forgive will be forgiven. The sending out in John's Gospel happens here and doesn't contain teaching or baptizing or making disciples. John's sending out contains, I sent you, so go and forgive. You have the power to forgive or not to forgive. The power is yours. John, by that time, is done being Jewish. By that time, John and his buddies do not want to try couple counseling ever again. By that time, John wants to be something else. So John's Jesus sends them to forgive, not to teach, to baptize, or to make disciples. John's Jesus is about forgiveness, the power to heal yourself and others by forgiving them and letting go. The longer you let your anger, your grief, your guilt have a hold on your life, the longer you are unhappy, unhealthy, and unholy. I have to admit on a personal level that for years I did two things. I did hope that some maybe negotiation can happen between us and the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of St. Louis. No, it was not unlike many marriages when we are hoping that something can be done. That the spouse who is drinking and abusive can come to his or her senses. So for a long time I was hoping and praying, no, we can figure it out. And at the same time I was very angry with what you-know-whom did to us. And I don't mean Lord Voldemort. That anger is very unhealthy and unholy. So when I look at this passage from today's gospel and I think of the stories of so many spouses, mostly women, who leave abusive relationships, who tell me about their wounds, physical, emotional, spiritual, I could not help but think of my wounds from that battle as well. And amazingly, Jesus starts this encounter by showing the wounds. So if you happen to be emerging, or if you ever emerged from an unhealthy relationship, you have wounds all over your body, physical, emotional, or spiritual. Don't lie to yourself, don't pretend that these wounds don't exist. They make you better you today. They make you more compassionate you. They make you more empathetic you. But also, you and I have to hear these two stages. Let go and forgive. If you are a Polish male like I am, letting go ain't easy, right? We are not good at letting go. It took me many years to come to a place when I realized I probably will not be Roman Catholic priest in good standing in my lifetime. When I finally said, okay, it's over. There is no fixing of that broken relationship. And then the second stage, forgiving, has been equally difficult and long. But I think today I can say with clear conscience, after John and his gospel, you know what? I'm done. I have wounds, but it's all in the past. I forgive you know whom, and I'm happy to be where I am today. I wanted to have a coming out moment today, and not that coming out, it's too late for that one, but I want to come out as a person who is not Roman Catholic anymore. And perhaps many of you are still dealing with this. Am I Catholic? Am I Roman Catholic? Am I Polish Catholic? Now, how do I deal with this toxic and abusive relationship? Acknowledge your wounds, let go, and forgive. Like every unhealthy relationship, for your own sake, it needs to end. For your own sake, you need to forgive them. And as a part of my coming out, I want to tell you that I have recently applied to be accepted as a priest, as a Catholic priest, in the Episcopal Diocese of Missouri. So the Episcopalians are a strange creature. They are Catholic, and at the same time they are not very 100% Catholic. They have bishops and deacons and priests, and at the same time their deacons and priests and bishops can be women. They have beautiful cathedrals, but the people decide what to do with these cathedrals. They choose and elect their pastors and their bishops. And many of them identify themselves as Catholics, just not Roman Catholics. They say we are Anglo-Catholics. So for my own sake, I talked to our bishop, Wayne Smith, here in St. Louis, and I asked him to formally accept me as an old Catholic priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Missouri. So I want you to know about that. It's in the making. The process is taking some time. I will not bore you about all the training sessions and workshops I'm having to attend, but I'm happy that there is a chance for a different and healthier relationship for me. After that old abusive relationship, I'm finally letting go and forgiving. Nothing is changing here at St. Stanislaus. If one day I become Episcopal priest, I will still be your Polish Catholic pastor. So our masses will not change, our music, will change when different musicians come, but our music will be from the same books, our prayers will be the same, our board of directors will still be the same. The parish is for now staying as it has been for many, many years. If one day the parish decides to perhaps let go and talk about establishing a new relationship with a new bishop, that will be your decision in the future. But for my own sake, it was time to find a new date in the church language, so to speak. So I'm inviting all of us today and for the rest of our lives to lick our wounds, but like St. John, to learn how to let go and forgive at the same time. Today is the Feast of Divine Mercy. Saint Faustina Kowalski, a Polish nun, received the revelations of Jesus' divine mercy. And her revelation that took place in the 1930s was so extreme in the vision of God's forgiveness, God's love that is merciful towards every single sinner, that when her writings were first published after her death, the Pope and the Vatican were so petrified that they put her writings on the index of the prohibited books. The diary of Sister Faustina Kowalski, who is a saint today, was forbidden to read by any good Roman Catholic. For over 40 years, her books were on the blacklist. Today, because of her writings, we have Divine Mercy Sunday. In the future, long after we are dead, long after we are gone, God will fix things up in God's time, in God's place. But for now, we are learning from St. John to let go and to forgive. Amen.